Good morning, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So lots of great stuff to go on to talk about today in real estate, but I know everybody is heavy into the holiday mode. Just a few short days till Christmas. We're just 4 days away, I believe. So lots of great stuff happening for all of you, I hope. And if Christmas isn't what you celebrate, I hope that you are celebrating something and the people around you, and have a great day. But basically, I'm going to start off with the stats here. And this is 376 homes were sold last week versus 417 the week before. Now, the interesting thing is it was kind of a leftover of the end of the month last time. So there's a few more, which totally makes sense last week. So that's no reason to be alarmed at all. And the median price is at $434,500, which is actually an increase, which is not, it's just a 1% increase, but it's basically within the same margin of where we have been. I believe last week was about $430,000. Now it's $435,500. So really close to that in regards to that. Basically, the inventory decreased by 89, which takes the inventory to 8535, which I'm always happy for a decrease in inventory at this point. We're in a normal market, but I'd like to see it, just a little bit more balanced on that side. And I think that means that the prices are holding. So when you're looking at the median price of the homes, and then you're also looking at the inventory that we're sitting at, where a well-balanced market, then that's a great thing to have right there. So of the 376 homes that sold, 32 of them were under 250, 41 between 250 and 300, 94 between 3 and 4, 74 between 450 and 400 and 500, 114 between 500 and a million, and 21 sold over $1 million. So you can see that our market is kind of balanced over those price points and everything when you're looking at it. The months of inventory overall is at 5.24, even at this lower volume for, a couple of weeks before Christmas. And basically under 250, there's 4.62 months of inventory. We go to 3.14 between 250 and 300, and then we're at 4.5, 5.32, 5.96, and over $1 million is at 9.63. So that is the market that is a little bit saturated and more of a buyer's market than usual. And so that's kind of where we're sitting there. When you're looking at the list to ask price ratio, we're at 96.77. And under 250 was at 91.99. Over $1 million was at 95.94. And then everything else was, very close to 97 to 98. So basically, the fringes, but there's, they were quite a bit down in the under 250 volume there, and 95 on the over $1 million. And so those definitely take it down to the 96.77, which we've pretty much been in the 97s. So what that tells you is that there's a little bit more wiggle room when it comes into the pricing a little bit. When you're looking at the condos, townhomes, and villas, there were 82 last week. That was 103 the week before, which was, again, because of the end of the month. And the price decreased just slightly to 278. So 278 for a condo versus 434 for a house. So that's kind of a big difference in regards to what you've got going on. The inventory decreased by 10 and now is at 4255. So when you're looking at that and how everything shakes out, we're going to go look at how that shakes down. Of the 82, 31 of them were under 250, 13 between 250 and 300, 24 between 3 and 400, only 8 between 400 and 500, 3 between 500 and $1 million, and 3 over $1 million. So the good news is that we sold condos over 1 million. We've gone a few weeks without selling any. And so now that we've sold 3, it's showing the inventory there at 1.54 because there's only 20 on the market. But that's not exactly true. It's probably more like a year's worth of inventory, kind of like the rest of the condos. Overall, the months of inventory is at 12, and we're at 12 all the way across the board. Only between 300 and 400 was at 10, and then 400 to 500 goes to 15 months of inventory. 500 to 1 million goes to 22 months of inventory, and then over 1 million, because 3 sold this week, but I can tell you for sure that over the last 3 or 4 weeks, there has been 1, if any, that have sold. So again, this is just a weekly recap of the stats. So we're looking for trends, we're looking for what's going on, but giving you a good idea in regards to what's happening out there in the market. So the main thing that I think is really interesting here is that the months of inventory in the condos versus the months of inventory in the single family homes. And I've got my theories on that, which I usually tell you, and I certainly will. The list to ask price ratio is at 95.94, so a little bit lower than the single family homes, but fairly close. We're kind of 95 across the board, except for that 400 to 500, that there's 15 months of inventory that they went at 97. And then the 96.65 from the 500 to 1 million with 21 months of inventory, and 94.69 with only 1 month of inventory. So again, it follows what's going on really in the single family homes when it comes to that list to ask price ratio, which I always find pretty interesting when we're looking at it. So when you're looking at a condo and you're going, oh my gosh, that's a lot of inventory out there, and it certainly is. And the reason that it got that way is really because I think of there were a lot of special assessments and everything that were going on in regards to the condo market. And I was speaking to some of the board members of a couple of the condos, and one of them told me that actually the price of them is going down. The monthly fee is going down $200 January 1st in that particular development, which I thought was awesome news. And the reason that it went up is because there was a lot of deferred maintenance. There became the need for additional engineering inspections and that kind of thing that added cost that the condo association wasn't prepared to. So now they've got everything kind of under control. They understand what's going on. And this particular condo board member told me that they were going down $200 this year, and they're going to go down another $100 next year. So when that happens, then that's going to make the condos more desirable and everything again. But right now, when people look at it, they look at basically the condo fee as another mortgage payment. And so the difference in the price, they could get a house and pay the same amount of money as they're going to pay for that condo. So some people like the condos from a maintenance standpoint, that they don't have to do much. And then there's others that don't. And so basically it comes down to trying to figure out, what's the best thing for everybody and what they want to do and all of that kind of good stuff. What kind of lifestyle do you want to have is what it comes down to. If you are living in a condo and that maintenance is covered, you don't get a choice as to deferring it if the condo association says that they want to do it now. Basically, you're not in control of that. Whereas you might be able to delay a month or two on your house. If you have kind of a roof problem, you're not going to be able to. But little maintenance items, maybe you could stall or delay a little bit if you needed to. So it comes down to really comfortability in regards to what you want to do, your budget, and how everything works and the kind of lifestyle that you want to have. But it's, I've done both. I've lived in condos and I've also lived in single family homes. And it just comes down to what you want. There's advantages to both. And so I guess with that comes disadvantages of both, but it just comes down to how you look at it and what you want to do it. So I'm going to get more into what's going on in our economy, in the market, and what you can do to do the best thing, what to do during the holidays and everything that are totally upon us after the break. And in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold, Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So, everybody's asking what's going on, what do you think is going to happen in the market and everything like that. In 2025, the stats are kind of in, we're heading to the end there. And basically, the Florida market cools is what they're saying, and early rebound emerging. So the market slowed in 2025, but easing mortgage rates, steady migration, and improving international activity point to early momentum. So basically, that is true that the market slowed, meaning that they're in our area from the standpoint of the number of properties that sold. The market did not cool when it came to the pricing or anything like that. We still stayed pretty even all the way across the board from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Now I'm going to have to check it exactly and see if we went up, just a smidge or down just a smidge, but for the most part, we stayed pretty steady in regards to that. Basically, the number of people coming to the state is not up to the post-pandemic amount of people that were coming to the state, but it's higher than the pre-pandemic estate. So what happened basically is that, we consistently have always had, everybody always says it's 1,000 people a day coming to Florida, more coming in than coming out. And after the pandemic, that number grew to an even higher number, and I'm not 100% positive what it was, but it did grow to a higher number because it became where people could work wherever they wanted to. So they were selling their houses in expensive areas and moving down to Florida where the prices were better. So as a result of that, I had several clients that moved down that might have sold their property in, say, Queens, New York, or something like that, and it was a home that they'd had for a long time, and they were able to come to Florida, and they bought 3 or 4 properties. So they bought them, with that money. So they bought their house cash that they were going to live in, and then they also bought 4 or 5 rental properties for themselves to give them income and everything. And that was all off of the one house that they sold in New York. And these are working families. This isn't any high executives or anything like that. These are just people that were, in their houses for a long time, paid off their mortgages. The value of the houses grew. And so they were able to come down here, buy a new house, buy several rental properties, and give themselves a nice income for the rest of their life without having to really work if they didn't want to. And so that was going on basically, I would say the latter part of 2020 probably it started, but definitely in 2021. And I think it went probably until about 22 until the interest rates increased. And then once the interest rates increased, then everybody kind of got cold feet. Now you still had a lot of cash buyers and that kind of thing, but the cash buyers, when they come in here, they always think that they can get a lot better price than the people that are getting a mortgage. And they generally cannot, but because the mortgage rates went up, then they definitely were a little bit more in control of the price being paid than they usually were. And so the market stalled is basically what it did from a pricing standpoint. It didn't stall without activity. The amount of activity went down. I would say it went down probably about 40% in regards to what it was, and I'd have to look at the numbers to see exactly. But what happened was that the people that were coming in, they were like, well, I really don't want to pay that amount. For the house, I've got cash, and as the market cooled, then basically they were able to have a little bit more negotiation power. Now, not a whole lot, because the market was at about 99%, and now it's at 98% is what I talked about today when it comes to single family homes in negotiating rooms. So there's still not a lot of room that they have to negotiate, but there is some. And so basically, it's very interesting in regards to seeing all that. And our inventory went from a half a month's inventory, which was basically no inventory, to basically it's up to now about, this week it says it's 5, but I'm going to 5 point something, but I'm going to bet that it's right around, when you look at a whole month going on, it's right around 5 months of inventory, which was a balance between buyers and sellers. So what that does is it gives buyers an opportunity to actually look at homes and have choices in regards to the homes of the ones that are on the market. And then in addition to that, they also, they can be a little bit more pickier, and they can, get some of the terms that they want. When there's only a half a month's inventory, there were offers with people not seeing them. From what my research and what I've seen, about 80% of the people wish that they hadn't moved so quickly on the house that they bought. I didn't have any of those people that I was working with, because we actually made our decisions. We actually have ways that we go about and go after properties that the people are looking for. And basically, I have one of those situations right now, because there's a condo that one of my clients wants to get. They want an end unit in a particular development. There's 44 of them, and none of them are on the market right now. 6 of them have sold in the last year, but there's none of them on the market right now. There's a smaller unit that's on the market, and there's about 10 of those on the market, but that one end unit that there's 44 of them, none of those are on the market. And that's what they want. So what I've done is I'm in process of going after all of those owners that own those units and see if any of them are interested in selling. And so it would be obviously a quick sale for them, my buyer's cash, and willing to pay market value and all of those kinds of good things. And so basically it's a win-win situation, but I've got to shake out that particular property because there aren't any on the market, and that's what they want. So the thing that I guess my lesson in that is that what's on the market is one thing, but what people want is another. So if somebody wants something that's not on the market, then it's my job to actually find that for them. And I do that all day long, day in and day out, in order to make sure that everything happens the way it absolutely, should, and all of that. And so basically when it comes down to it, that's what the bottom line is that people want what they want. And unfortunately, in that time period of like the end of 20 to probably 22, people really didn't have too many choices. And so when they did the research afterwards, they found that 80% of the people weren't happy with their purchase because they were just so quick to move that they didn't think about really what they wanted. And when you do go after the ones that aren't showing up on the market yet, you're the only one playing in that sandbox, and you do have a lot better opportunity to get what you want. So basically, the bottom line is that regardless of the market, in my opinion, what you have to do is you have to know what you want to accomplish, and then you have to work with somebody that's going to help you accomplish those goals. And so that's what I do day in and day out in order to make things happen. And so it comes down to that it's got to be a win-win situation for everybody, in my opinion, and you've got to end up with the best possible solution for you. But when they're looking at the migration, which is where I kind of got off on this tangent, is that we still have more people coming in than we have going out. And so they're definitely coming in and wanting a particular product or wanting a particular property or something like that, and keeping the market moving for those sellers that want to sell and hold. And then there's those others that are holding off, for the interest rate and all of that kind of good stuff. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio, and I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I was talking about the transitions and all of that kind of good stuff. And basically, the international sales in Florida are also up. And they're up about 50%, which you think, wow, that's really good. And, if you're a seller and you're thinking that somebody's going to come in and buy it from another country, the thing is about that's interesting to me is that basically the people that are coming in from another country, most of them are from South America. And the Caribbean buyers, they are 45% of the foreign purchasers, and then 18% are the people from Canada and from Europe. But of all of the sales and everything, they're making up 5% of the sales in Florida. And so that's what it comes down to. And that's about 10 billion is what I believe I read of what the total sales were from that. Basically, that's kind of what's going on there, and so it's a force in our market, but it's not by any means dominant or anything like that, which I think is good. This week, the interest rates went down a tad, and they're almost to as low as they've been, which is 6.19, I believe it was, somewhere around there. It's still in the sixes, 6.16, 6.17. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. And so basically the bottom line is that there are still, rooms for improvement when it comes to the interest rate. And my opinion is once that interest rate and that affordability factors come into play, then the market will go crazy again from the standpoint of the inventory will start to vanish, and then the prices will go up. So we might have a little bit of inventory shrinkage before we have the prices go up, but it's not going to be much. And so that's something that if you are looking to make a move and you're a buyer, I would strongly consider thinking about it now, because I think that we might have another price jump once the interest rates go down. Then what that does is that immediately makes an affordability play for all those people that have been waiting on the sidelines. The other thing that I thought that was interesting, that was an article that came out this week that was talking about how we still don't have enough rental property in Florida for the demand. And that's why it keeps rental prices pretty high. So as an investor, if you've got rental homes, you've probably got some pretty good opportunities there and things that you can do with that when you come to. And so looking at that, and then the other side of the coin, when you've got those rental properties and everything, you may have some additional tax write-offs. You've got appreciation that's going to happen in the long term and all of those kinds of things too. So real estate is really a long-term play, and a lot of people like it better than the stock market because it's dirt. I remember one lady that she would tell me, hey, you can't go wrong with dirt. It's not going to go anywhere, and it's just a great asset. You can drive by it. You can see it. You know what's going on with it. And eventually, it usually does go up. And I think that that's still going to happen here because we do have more people coming in than going out. So there is that demand that's sitting there for property. So you definitely want to look at, what is your best situation and what do you want to do in regards to, your particular living situation, and what do you want to do when it comes down to it. As I've often said, it's a lifestyle change. Maybe it's being closer to something. Maybe it's being further away from something. It's either getting a bigger place, getting a smaller place, going from a 2-story to a 1-story, a 1-story to a 2-story. So there's all kinds of factors that come in that when people are making those housing decisions that they need to think about and look at and all of those kinds of things. So basically, it comes down to it that there is always movement. We have great movement here in Central Florida. Sometimes it's more movement than others, and that's when things are really cooking. In that period when I was talking about more people coming in from other states and everything after the pandemic, there was about double the number of properties that were being sold. And one of the things that may be attractive to people when you're looking at it are the assumption rates that are out there. So when someone has an FHA mortgage or even a VA mortgage, there is the opportunity many times on those low interest rates, if the seller wants to sell, that they can transfer that mortgage to another person, and that's called an assumption. Now, there's a couple of caveats and everything if you're going to do that. I just have gone through a couple of them recently, and the first thing about it is that they take an awful lot of time. And the reason that they take so much time is because the banks, if you're sitting at about a 3% interest rate, which is what these were, or they were both under 3, and so the banks can get double that amount on their money, they would much rather that the homeowner pays off that loan than having a new person take it over at that same interest rate that they had several years ago. And so as a result of that, the banks take their time. It's obviously a back burner thing. If you were going to get a loan that you were going to make double the amount on it than the one that you currently had, which one would you spend the time on? You would spend the time on the one that basically you were going to have, make double the money on. So when you do have an assumption, here's a couple of things that happen with it that you may not know, is that everything is done through the servicing bank that has it at the moment, and they're the ones that are in control. So if you do have a loan that's assumable, you might want to check with the bank and see what their rules are, how it works, and everything like that. There was one of them that actually it was a property that went under contract in August, and the final closing was in December. And you're thinking, wow, that's crazy. And that's kind of what we thought too. We didn't think it was going to take anywhere near that amount of time. And basically with this particular servicer, what they do is that you talk to the assumption department, and then about 30 days later, they send out the papers for you to sign. And then 30 days after that, they sign a loan processor if you're lucky, and then they say that it's going to take 90 days or so to actually process the loan in order to do this assumption. Now, the buyer that was buying was able to pay completely full cash, had a credit score in the 800s, basically had no debt, was retired, multi-millions and all of that kind of good stuff, and yet had to go through a lot of hoops in order to get this interest rate. But, he can't borrow at that rate, so he thought, I'm willing to go through these hoops to, get he can't make that amount, it doesn't make sense for, if he can get that money at that low of rate, that it makes sense for him to get it. Even borrowing from himself, it would cost him more than that because he can make more on his investments. So he wanted to assume that portion of the loan and paid cash for the rest of it. So basically, the bottom line was on it is that it did take an awful lot of time. It was a lot of hoops that he wasn't used to jumping through because basically when as he's gone through his life, he's got personal bankers that he works with and all of that kind of stuff, and they make things as easy as possible for you. And this was jumping through a hoop, and every day they would ask for something else that they already asked for the day before, it felt like. And so it was more of a painful process than he thought. And the thing that you have to look at and that you have to know if you are assuming an FHA loan, that FHA has gone to, I think it was probably 15 or 20 years ago now, where you have to always pay the PMI or the additional fee. I know it's probably not called PMI for an FHA loan, but whatever that mortgage insurance is on an FHA loan, that goes for the life of the loan. So when he was assuming it, at first he thought it was, 2.75, and it ended up being 3.14 which is still a great rate. But because of that mortgage insurance that is included on the loan for the life of the loan. So when you're looking at an assumption, you definitely have to look at that and ask those questions to see what it is so that you know exactly what's going on with that. In order to get in touch with us, all you have to do is call 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I just wanted to continue on with assumptions. The other loan that was assumed that I did recently was a VA loan. And basically when they called the servicing bank, they told them how long it was going to be. And they said 60 days, and it pretty much ended up being 60 days. So when you are thinking about assuming a loan, the first thing that you want to do is that you want to call that particular servicer and see what the scoop is on it, how long it's going to take, what it's going to do, all of those kinds of things. And basically that will make a huge difference in regards to your decision, whether or not you want to do it and go through the pain of it or not. The one that took from August until December, the homeowner had already moved to another state, so the property was vacant. So they were paying those fees all of those 6 months when it wasn't closing, and there was nothing that they could do about it because they wanted to keep that buyer because it had been on the market for a while because it was a condo townhouse, basically is what it was. And so the people definitely wanted to sell it. They wanted to sell it to this guy because they knew he was going to go through with it and everything. And basically the bottom line is that they were willing to wait the 6 months. Now I had the buyer, and it was a very frustrating path for him, like I said, because he's used to more hoops being not having to jump through as many hoops, and for the amount of money that it was and everything like that, it was very interesting. And an interesting thing that he did is that he actually had bought a property in that time frame for his son that was an investment property for him, and did pay cash for it. And he's like, that only took like a week, and then a week later his son had a mortgage from him, and they recorded that, so they were both on the deed, and then they weren't. But when he did all of that, then that created another probably week of work. It didn't delay the closing or anything like that, but the mortgage company wanted to see all those documents to see if he had other obligations that he was going to have to make on this new property that he paid for cash, and all of that kind of thing. So it really, really can get complicated. And that brings me to the point where if you are getting a loan and you're going through the housing process, there are several things that you need to know that you need to really be careful of during that loan process. And this was a long, drawn out process for this guy, and he was just living his life doing what he normally does and couldn't believe the accountability that he had to go through in order to get this loan. And so basically the number one thing that you do not want to do is that you don't want to be buying things while you're any big purchases while you're going through the loan process. So for example, you do not want to go and buy a new car. You don't want to buy new furniture. You don't want to buy appliances. You don't want to buy any of those things. You don't want to have any of those pulls on your credit while you're going through a mortgage, because that's going to be a problem. And so what you, and if you do that stuff, I mean, it might not affect your credit and all of that kind of stuff. It might not affect your ratios, which I'll go into in a minute. But if it does, then it could make that your loan is denied. So basically what I mean by the ratios is that each type of loan has an amount that has been regulated that says that you can only, for example, have a total debt of, say, 50% of what your gross pay is in general. So if you're bringing in $4,000 a month, then you can only be paying out $2,000 a month in housing and all of your debts combined, roughly. That's the rough thing of what it is. So if you go out there and you get a car and you didn't have a car payment, and now all of a sudden you have another $300 car payment, $500 car payment, $1,000 car payment, that's going to come off of your affordability of what you can afford for a house. And so that's why you definitely want to avoid that. And the other thing that you don't want to do is that you don't want to do any big transactions or anything like that. Anything that you do in your bank account is going to be sourced. So if someone owed you money and they're giving you the money back, then the bank wants to know, hey, where did that money come from and why did you get it and all of that kind of good stuff. And when did it go out in the first place? And it just opens up a whole big can of worms that you probably don't want to have answered. And so basically it comes down to that you want to keep your life when you're getting a mortgage as simple as possible without doing anything to rock the boat. And in my opinion, that's your best bet in regards to what you want to do and how to do it. And so when it comes down to it, you really need to plan and do what you want to do. And that way you're not going to have any problems and you're just going to sail through. And there are mortgage companies out there today that can close a loan in 3 weeks. So you get it done and, it's just a snapshot of those 3 weeks. But if you're going through that assumption process, like I was talking about, it could take 6 months or more, like this one just recently did. And then you're going to be under the microscope for those whole 6 months in regards to what's going on. And if you're very steady and nothing much changes, then that's not a problem. But if you're the kind of person that you like to, do this, that, and the other thing, it might be something that would draw questions because they're going to be looking at all 6 months of your bank statements and what did you do in that time frame and in that credit, period. Why did you go buy a car? Why didn't you? It's like, what did you do in regards to making all this stuff happen? So when you my opinion is just keep it simple, and then you're going to have everything and get everything that you want, and it's not going to be a problem. So we're coming to the end of this show, and I just wanted to really wish everybody a Merry Christmas and all of that. I hope that all of you are either with friends or family and that you have the best days and week up ahead to get together with everybody and enjoy it. Good food, good friends, good family, good everybody, kind of getting, just having a great time out there. I know a lot of people travel and everything. I'm going to be traveling for a couple of days myself. And I just think that it's a great time to reflect, to enjoy the people that are here. So maybe some of you are missing people that are no longer here. And I'm sorry to hear that for you. Everything changes as life goes on, but it's, great to enjoy people when you can, and you should take every advantage, in my opinion, to do that. So again, I just want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, and we'll be back to wish you a Happy New Year next week. But basically, when it comes down to it and your house and what you're doing, the best thing to do is just plan. If you have any questions, just feel free to give me a call. I'm always happy to answer and to talk to anybody that would like to. But in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.